Throughout history, some warrior societies have become legendary for their bravery and fighting skills. Among them, the Cheyenne Dog Soldiers were particularly notorious. Known for their fierce resistance and unconventional tactics, the Dog Soldiers were a force to be reckoned with. However, their legacy is quite stained with some dark episodes of brutal treatment of captives, especially women. Be prepared for some stomach-churning details as we reveal the horrifying torment captive women had to endure at the hands of brutal Cheyenne Dog Soldiers. Let's get right into it. The Dog Soldiers were initially one of the less prominent groups. However, their role expanded significantly due to the increasing pressures from westward expansion and conflicts with other tribes and U.S. forces. The formation of the Dog Soldiers is attributed to a young Cheyenne man who, lacking influence in his tribe, sought to create a group that would earn respect and honor through bravery and martial prowess. One evening, the young man sat sadly in the middle of his camp, praying to the great prophet and the great medicine man for help. As he sang a sacred song at sunset, the camp's dogs became restless. While the people slept, the man sang until midnight, then began to wail and continued singing as he walked to the camp's edge, followed by all the dogs carrying their puppies. At dawn, they reached a timbered river bottom. The dogs formed a semicircle around the man sitting by a leaning tree. A lodge magically appeared over him, made of buffalo skins and supported by saplings. The dogs entered the lodge and transformed into humans, dressed like members of the Dogmen's Society. They taught the man their songs, ceremonies, and dances. For 3 days, the camp circle resembled a real one. The Dogmen blessed the man, promising success for him and his people if he followed their instructions. When the Cheyenne discovered the camp, the lodge and Dogmen vanished, turning back into dogs. Realizing their mistake, the Cheyenne Warriors joined the man's society the next day. They imitated the Dogmen in dress and song, forming the Dogmen Warriors, a powerful warrior society within the Cheyenne tribe. The Cheyenne Dog Soldiers wore a distinctive uniform featuring a bonnet with feathers, an eagle bone whistle, leggings, breechcloth, moccasins, and a skunk skin belt. They carried a bow and arrows and a snake-shaped rattle. One chief and 7 assistants led the society, including 4 battle leaders who wore special sashes and fringed leggings. Their secret rituals lasted 4 days and included 400 songs. The Dog Soldiers were responsible for police duties within the tribe, enforcing camp regulations with severe punishments, and overseeing the tribal buffalo hunt to ensure a fair distribution of meat. By 1830, the Massascota Cheyenne Band joined the Dog Soldiers, making the society the most prominent and aggressive among the Cheyenne warrior societies. The society comprised about half the tribe's men. In the year 1864, the United States was embroiled in the Civil War, a conflict that consumed the nation's attention and resources. Amidst this chaos, the western frontier faced its brutal battles, particularly involving the Cheyenne Dog Soldiers, a warrior society renowned for their fierce dedication and martial prowess. Taking advantage of the weakened state of American defenses, the Dog Soldiers launched a series of devastating raids against vulnerable settlements, with one of the most notorious being the massacre along the Medicine Road. With many non-disabled men away fighting in the Civil War, the frontier settlements were left largely undefended. The Cheyenne Dog Soldiers saw this as an opportune moment to strike against those encroaching on their lands. These raids were not merely random acts of violence. They were carefully planned military strategies designed to disrupt and deter further American expansion. Reports from these raids paint a grim picture of the extreme violence inflicted upon the settlers. One of the most horrifying aspects was the sexual violence against captive women. This starkly contrasted with previous perceptions of Cheyenne women's chastity. Fur traders and settlers who had once viewed Cheyenne women as largely unapproachable now witnessed a terrifying shift as the dog soldiers employed rape as a weapon of war. This tactic aimed to humiliate and terrorize the settlers, breaking the spirit of their communities. The violence did not end there. Men, women, and children were brutally murdered, often through methods designed to maximize fear and suffering. Scalping, a practice with deep cultural and ritual significance among the Plains tribes, became a common sight. The scalps were taken as trophies, symbolizing victory and serving as psychological warfare against the settlers. In addition to the physical violence, the dog soldiers destroyed homes, farms, and trading posts, aiming to disrupt the settlers' ability to sustain themselves and deter further encroachment into Cheyenne territory. The history of the American frontier is filled with violent clashes between Native American tribes and settlers. One such tragic event happened on August 10, 1868, involving Southern Cheyenne Warriors, including the infamous Dog Soldiers. This incident in the Saline Valley, Kansas, is a stark reminder of the brutal realities of frontier life. Over 180 Southern Cheyenne warriors gathered in the Saline Valley, Kansas. They originally planned to attack the Pawnee tribe, their traditional enemies. However, a small group of these warriors veered off course and approached a homestead farm in Lincoln County, Kansas, owned by David Bacon. When the warriors entered the Bacon house, they sought food and supplies. Unfortunately, what followed was a horrifying act of violence. David Bacon was not home, leaving his wife, Jane Bacon, alone. The Cheyenne warriors, including dog soldiers, forced their way in and assaulted Jane. She was subjected to sexual violence, a brutal act that reflects the savage nature of frontier conflicts. The attack on the Bacon Homestead had a lasting impact on the local community, heightening tensions and leading to increased military action against Native American tribes. For Jane Bacon, the trauma of the assault was a lifelong burden, highlighting the vulnerability of settler women on the frontier. Such incidents were often used to justify further military campaigns against Native American tribes, perpetuating the cycle of violence. The actions of the dog soldiers, while undeniably horrific, were a desperate response to the systematic destruction of their way of life. The physical mutilation of captives, including women, by the Cheyenne dog soldiers, represents one of the most horrific aspects of their warfare practices. This brutality was not merely incidental, but often ritualistic, intended to serve multiple purposes: instilling fear in their enemies, exacting revenge, and reinforcing their societal norms and warrior ethos. Scalping was common among many Native American tribes, including the Cheyenne. It involved removing the scalp of the victim, often while they were still alive. For the dog soldiers, scalping was a way to showcase their victory in battle and collect war trophies. These scalps were sometimes displayed on poles or worn as adornments, symbolizing victory and a tool of psychological warfare. For captive women, being scalped was a particularly humiliating and painful experience, symbolizing the complete domination by their captors. Dismemberment was also a severe form of torture, which involved the cutting off of limbs or other body parts. This could be done after death, to desecrate the body, or, more horrifyingly, while the victim was still alive to prolong their suffering. Severing hands, feet, or fingers was a means of inflicting physical pain and humiliation. This form of mutilation was intended to strip the victim of their humanity and reduce them to a state of abject vulnerability. Other torture methods employed by the dog soldiers included burning, cutting, and beating. Captive women could be tied to stakes and subjected to various forms of torment, such as having their skin cut or burned with hot implements. These acts were often carried out publicly to serve as a warning to others and to boost the warriors' morale. Torture was both a means of extracting information and a form of entertainment. The ordeal for captured women began with their violent abduction during raids, which left them traumatized and disoriented. Once in captivity, they faced harsh and unforgiving living conditions. These women were often housed in makeshift shelters or among the lodges of their captors, where they received minimal provisions and inadequate protection from the elements. Overcrowding and poor sanitation contributed to the spread of diseases, further deteriorating their health. Captive women were often forced to perform domestic chores such as cooking, cleaning, and laundry under harsh conditions and strict supervision. The workload was excessive, leaving them exhausted with little time for rest. Some captives were made to work in fields, tending crops, or gathering food. This labor was particularly grueling due to long hours, exposure to harsh weather, and the physical strain involved. Others were sometimes required to produce textiles, pottery, or other handicrafts. These items were either used by their captors or traded for resources. The repetitive nature of this work, performed under demeaning conditions, further stripped captives of any sense of accomplishment or pride. Captive women were frequently traded among warriors or between tribes, treated as commodities rather than individuals. The constant threat of being traded or sold added to their psychological torment. They had no control over their lives and were forced to obey their captors' commands without question. This lack of autonomy was reinforced through constant surveillance and the threat of punishment, stripping them of any personal freedom or decision-making power. Many captives experienced post-traumatic stress disorder due to their capture and subsequent treatment. Symptoms included flashbacks, anxiety, depression, and nightmares, as the trauma of their violent abduction and continuous abuse left deep psychological scars. The systematic dehumanization process destroyed the captive's sense of self. Stripped of their cultural and personal identities, many captives struggled with feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. The Cheyenne dog soldiers used psychological torture to break the spirits of their captives, particularly women. This form of cruelty went beyond physical harm and aimed to destroy the mental and emotional well-being of the victims. The dog soldiers kept captives in a constant state of fear by threatening more violence. Women were told that any attempt to escape or resist would lead to severe punishment or death. Another cruel tactic was making captives watch the suffering of others. This was meant to show the captor's power, scare other captives into obedience, and add to the psychological trauma. Women were forced to witness their friends and fellow captives being tortured, raped, or killed. They were seeing this added to their trauma, making them feel even more hopeless and scared. The mental impact of seeing such violence could lead to severe emotional distress and depression. Exploring the terrible things the Cheyenne dog soldiers did to captive women is like looking into a dark part of history. These actions show how bad things can get in war and when different cultures clash. The dog soldiers were a tough group within the Cheyenne tribe. They were known for sticking to their traditions and being good at fighting. But when it came to captive women, they did some awful stuff. It's important to know that capturing enemies in war was normal back then, and sometimes people were treated badly. But let's not make excuses. What happened to these women was cruel. They suffered through horrible things like physical and sexual abuse, torture, and humiliation. The impact of these acts goes way beyond just the victims. The pain and trauma affected whole communities for a long time. It's not enough to say sorry. We must work towards making things right. Looking at these dark parts of history makes us face some tough truths about how bad people can be. But it also reminds us how important it is to treat everyone with kindness and respect. By learning from the past and working towards a better future, we honor the strength of those who suffered and strive to build a world where such terrible things never happen again. Kindly give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more insightful videos. Thanks for watching.